Welcome to my latest YouTube video. My name is Rosenberg. I'm the author of The Human Magnet Syndrome and the creator of the Codependency Cure. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite books, a book that I used to use all the time when I was a couples and marriage therapist. It's a book that has sold millions of copies, and I'm just going to guess around 3 to 5 million copies. It's called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. The application of this book can be dangerous to an SLD or codependent in marriage or couples therapy. It is not because this book in any way is a bad or dangerous book. Quite the contrary. This book is especially helpful for a relationship in which each person has a capacity to communicate what they need, empathy for the other person, the ability to sacrifice their needs in order to take care of another person's, with the understanding that that person will do the same. In other words, this book helps most couples who are stuck in their relationship where they don't feel loved, but yet they do love their partner and believe their partner is capable of wanting to love them back. The presumption is that each person in a relationship has the capacity to want to listen, to empathize, to want to try to meet the other person's needs. They also have the capacity to learn from their mistakes, the capacity to overcome their feelings of being hurt in order to listen to an alternate way of solving their problems and getting what they need. This type of person for which this book was written is most individuals. However, if you have a personality disorder or you are an SLD, self-love deficient, the term that I call for codependent, this book does not work. But before I tell you why it doesn't work, let me explain why this book is so valuable to so many people, whether you're in marriage or couples therapy, or you picked up this book and you decided to read it and with your partner apply it to your relationship. It presumes that each person has what Gary Chapman calls a love language. And that is a way in which they best understand what is love to them, what makes them feel loved, what makes them feel valuable, what makes them feel special. Dr. Chapman explains that not everyone has the same love language or the same way in which they feel loved or expect another person to make them feel loved. He breaks the love languages down into 5 categories: affirmation, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Now, these are general categories, and the purpose of this video is not to explain in depth Dr. Chapman's book and all of the love languages, but to summarize them, and of course to explain why this book can be detrimental, if not harmful, to an SLD or codependent in a relationship with a narcissist in marriage therapy. So, words of affirmation. By the way, that's my love language. That simply is when someone feels loved, when another person says kind things, affirming things, complimentary things. They are acknowledged for who they are and what they do. Acts of service. That means someone who just wants to do something nice for another person, to help them, to make whatever they're doing that might be challenging or difficult more easy, to just partner with them in a project that is difficult, to help them with the children, to help them with a job. These people feel loved when another person is willing to take care of someone's needs for help or service. The next one is receiving gifts. Of course, this does not need much of an explanation, but some people feel loved when they receive gifts. Now, they're not just birthday presents or Christmas presents, but gifts, flowers, candy, someone makes them dinner, something just out of the ordinary, or maybe something that they love and they just don't get often. The next one would be quality time. Quality time is as simple as just hanging out with the person, being with them, not necessarily doing something that they absolutely love to do, but making them feel important and loved because you're willing to spend time with them and be present and open to meeting their needs for this type of love language. Quality time does not include being with the person and on your cell phone or watching TV. Quality time is the connection to someone in their presence who wants to be with them, who enjoys being with them. And lastly is physical touch. Physical touch is a little bit more complicated. Physical touch can mean anything from a hug, holding a person's hand, to sexual relations. It means that a person feels loved when they feel the physical sensation of another person who has the intentions of showing their love. Physical touch does not mean having sex with the person. It means showing someone that you love them through physical touch. It's about intimacy. It's about connection. So to summarize, Dr. Chapman's 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. The 5 love language book and its messages and instruction rests on the presumption that 2 people are healthy enough to be open to what they're not doing, open enough to maybe how their thinking is not adjusted or connected to the thinking or expectations of their partner, open enough to be empathetic to hear how their attempts at making another person feel loved is not working. What makes this information so important is both to identify how a person who loves another wants to let them know that they are loved, respected, and cared for. Because if you should think that your love language is theirs and you keep showing them how much you love them and they don't register it as love because they speak a different language, then you accidentally are making them feel unloved. So it's ideal for relationships of all types, romantic relationships, family relationships, platonic relationships. The danger of applying Chapman's work to the covert narcissist or ASPD client in couples therapy is that the therapist will neither know who they're dealing with, will understand, perceive the discomfort, the fear, the anxiety of the partner who has spent a whole relationship, whether it's 6 months or 30 years, with a pathological liar and a manipulator who, like most victims of covert narcissism or ASPD in an intimate long-term relationship, are more than likely beaten down, afraid, and just terrified that if they should say anything, their partner will be smart enough, crafty enough, manipulative enough to pretend that they actually are the good guy, the honest one, the open one. But in actuality, once that session is over, the good guy, the good woman face comes off and they tear into that codependent. They tear into the SLD. And if you don't understand the craftiness, the slipperiness, the intense level of psychopathology of the ASPD or covert narcissists and how they can manipulate many people, if not most people, to their point of view, their well-crafted, well-honed personality, then the SLD is in big trouble. Now let us consider the category of pathological narcissists that have antisocial personality disorder traits. That would include the covert narcissist or the ASPD, the sociopath, the person with antisocial personality disorder. They are the consummate actors. They pretend and they are so good at it that people cannot tell. They can fake being normal to most people. They can fake having emotions. They can fake having empathy. So if the ASPD is in marriage therapy, they're there for a reason. ASPD or covert narcissists. They're there for a reason. They're there because they are trying to get the therapist to join them in the focus that the problem is with their partner and they are the recipient of the problem and want the therapist's help and empathy. They are trying to manipulate, perhaps even gaslight the therapist into believing what doesn't actually exist. When a pathological narcissist is involved in this type of therapy, they don't have the empathy to understand how they are hurting the other person. They tend to personalize any feedback they are given, and more often than not, are prone to narcissistic injuries, which are like landmines for any marriage or couples therapist. The SLDs are conflict avoidant. They're meek. They're overly sensitive. They're hypervigilant to the potential of harm, and they will spend a great deal of time in marriage therapy or couples therapy watching for the potential of getting the narcissist mad and trying to keep the equilibrium of the session at an even keel and try to manipulate the environment so that they can get what they want, but in reality have no ability to ever obtain. Also consider gaslighting. Gaslighting is a systematic use of psychological manipulation to make a person believe they have a problem that never existed or was mild in the beginning that has become incapacitated. So if you are dealing with a gaslit SLD and you're a marriage therapist, the presumption is, if you've read my material on gaslighting, the gaslighter has sociopathic traits, then the probability is you will not have picked up on the SLD's victimization of gaslighting. You will not pick up on the pathological narcissist perpetration of it and the covert and stealthy manner in that they hide their duplicitous and dangerously harmful actions while maintaining the good savior narrative. So, if you are dealing with an SLD who's gaslit, a covert narcissist, or an ASPD who is a gaslighter, they come in for marriage therapy. The therapist suggests the love languages. They both agree to it. The therapist will be working with a pretend version, the SLD. They won't see what's really going on, who that person was before the gaslighting, what happened to their voice, what happened to their strength of character, what happened to their ability to protect themselves. They will see a broken person who believes the reason they're broken is because of themselves. And they will see the gaslighting narcissist as the wonderful, compassionate partner who wants to help, but in reality, behind the scenes, is pulling all the levers and pushing all the buttons responsible for the gaslighting. This type of therapy, using this method, is dangerous because SLDs have a lifetime of hoping, desperately hoping that one day they're going to get a break. One day the narcissist will realize his or her mistakes. One day they'll get the apologies, they'll get the love, they'll get the respect, they'll get the caring. And when they are introduced this book and the therapist is really gung-ho about it, they get excited. But when it comes crashing down, then it's one more disappointment. It's one more failure. And of course, if they're an SLD, they're more than likely gaslit, then it's going to be perceived as their fault or blamed that it's their fault. It's highly dangerous to the SLD because of everything that I've said up to this point about the therapist's lack of knowledge of pathological narcissism, the therapist's inability to see the covert narcissism or the sociopathy, the pathological lying, the therapist's unintentional siding with the narcissist in order to calm down or manage the chaos of the session. And the therapist, of course, more than anything, lack of understanding of why the love languages should not be applied when working with a narcissist or codependent, the thesis of this video. Perhaps the most potentially dangerous element of this type of psychotherapy with the covert narcissist or the sociopath and an SLD is you are handing the narcissist another weapon to use against the SLD. As they learn more about the SLD's vulnerabilities, about their desires, about their wishes and their hopes, they can use that to punish them, manipulate them, gaslight them in all sorts of ways that most people cannot imagine, even psychotherapists. This does not work with pathological narcissists. Applying his 5 love languages in a relationship between an SLD and narcissist will only bring the narcissist into higher levels of entitlement and grandiose thinking and selfishness and bury or deepen the hole within which the SLD is buried by expecting them to do something that will not be reciprocated, even with the promise that it will be reciprocated. So let me be specific. If you are a SLD, codependent, and you pick up this book and you think, okay, well, I will solve the problem. I will find out what my partner wants, how they feel and how they experience love. And I will do that for him or her. And then I will communicate to him or her how I experience or feel love, and they'll do that for me. And then we will have a positive outcome. But if that person is a pathological narcissist, by definition, whether they have borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder, by definition, they do not have the capacity to unconditionally love another person. They just don't. And this is explained in detail in my Human Magnet Syndrome book. So if they do go to marriage therapy, if they do go to couples therapy, or if the person picks up the book and says, let's do this ourselves, and they're about to begin a discussion on how to communicate what their love language is, to embark upon this healing and productive relationship challenge of trying to make their lover, their friend, their significant other feel loved while explaining what they need, it just requires give and take. It requires empathy. It requires sympathy. It requires the ability to give as much as you're willing to take. Yes, of course, having the language of the person and having that defined either through the book or a therapist, yes, that does help. But if you tell a narcissist as an SLD, my love language is affirmation. And then the narcissist says, well, their love language is acts of service. And if it would go well, the pathological narcissist would unconditionally attempt to provide acts of service and kindness and help to make their partner loved. And the SLD would then reciprocate. Well, the problem is most pathological narcissists have narcissistic injuries. And if you should tell them that they are not doing something right, they are not doing something enough, or they did something that is making you feel bad, they have a reflexive response of resentment, anger, and blame. Some result in tirades, some result in silent treatments. But more often than not, there is a punishment, a punishing response. The SLD, on the other hand, who vocalizes their love language, when they don't get their love language met, they are prone to sucking it up, to hope that one day their partner will fulfill that love language. But they are too afraid to communicate that or confront that person, because if they should do that too often, then it will start the narcissistic injury, the resentment, the counterattack that completely neutralizes the whole purpose of Dr. Chapman's love languages. It makes it almost invalid. Again, you need two people willing to compromise, to communicate, and to try to sacrifice what they need in any given moment to make the other person feel loved, with the trust that that person will reciprocate. In these SLD narcissist relationships, the reciprocation is one-sided. In fact, my definition of SLDD or codependency simply is a relationship pattern in which the predominance of love, respect, and caring is given to other people with the hopes that it will be reciprocated, but it's not. Then the SLD tries to make it reciprocal. They can't, and they stay in a relationship. So now let's imagine a scenario. An SLD who is an active SLD. Active codependent, who's always trying to fix things, always trying to do the right thing to get the narcissist to listen, to pay attention, to not do things that hurt them, to do things that make them feel good, with no success, but they stay in the relationship. That is the stereotypical active SLD or codependent. They go into marriage therapy. The marriage therapist says, hey guys, I got this great book. It's The Love Languages by Dr. Chapman. Let's figure out what your love language is, and let's then practice it in our session and at home. And I believe that if you guys find a way to make the other person feel loved, it will solve a lot of your problems, get you back on track, and you won't necessarily need my help anymore. Of course, that's how it goes in situations in which there's not a high level of psychopathology. The narcissist hears the therapist say to his partner, you are not giving me the type of love that I need. The narcissist feels that their partner is not taking care of them. Remember, narcissists project their narcissism on others. So they are constantly feeling that other people to whom they are selfish, domineering, and controlling, they project those same personality traits on other people, but cannot see it in themselves. So if they're in therapy and a therapist pulls out this love language book and says, okay, what is your love language? And the narcissist identifies it. They are hearing the therapist say, your problems in a relationship are because your partner is not meeting your love language. Now that in itself is highly damaging to the SLD because the SLD has historically tried to take care of, love, respect, and care of the narcissist who hasn't been historically reciprocal. But the narcissist is not aware of the love, respect, and caring inequity. They're not aware of it. And if they were, they wouldn't care about it and they would blame the other person. So now they're in marriage therapy. The marriage therapist says, okay, this is your love language, this is her love language. The narcissist hears validation and affirmation and believes that if the SLD, their spouse, their significant other, their girlfriend or boyfriend, can make them feel loved, then everything will be better. The truth of the matter is a narcissist's expectation for love is like a bucket filled with holes. No matter how much you try to fill that bucket up, the water just leaks out. There's never enough love for a narcissist to feel satiated. And that is for complicated reasons that has to do with what happened to them as children, the attachment trauma, and other matters that are described in my Human Magnet Syndrome book. So no matter what the love language is, the SLD is set up to fail because it won't be enough. Moreover, the love languages and the application of it presumes that the partner will reciprocate to the narcissist. To fulfill their partner's love language means they have to take care of someone unconditionally, not as a matter of an agreement, not as a matter of negotiations, mediation. To fulfill this love language proposal, you have to love your partner and be able and willing to want to find a way to make them feel loved. The narcissist is unable to get that far and deep into love, into intimacy, into connection. The idea is for each person to communicate their partner's love languages. But that's not possible when you lack empathy, remorse, sensitivity, you're self-centered, you project your own negative selfishness onto others. Now, on the other hand, we have the SLD or codependent who is in therapy, working with someone on these concepts of the love languages. They are excited. They think, well, if I can just make him want to love me and fulfill my love language, I'll give him whatever his love language is, assuming it's appropriate. And because we're in marriage therapy or couples therapy, let's assume it's appropriate. The problem is it's a setup to the SLD or codependent. They have been trying the whole relationship to get someone to love, respect, and care for them who has historically been unable to. And now they're given hope that if they fulfill this person, their significant other's love language, that they will not only make that person happy, but they will be the recipient of love. But it doesn't happen because the narcissist, as soon as they are triggered, as soon as they are activated, as soon as they are angered, as soon as they have a narcissistic injury, their whole interest in the love languages stops. Because the love language was never about this mutual, reciprocal attempt to make the other person feel loved. The narcissist cannot really grasp that. And if they do, then they're faking it. They're likely to be ASPDs or covert narcissists. Consider the therapist is unaware of one of the clients being a pathological narcissist. And they should confront the narcissist about one of the problems or complaints or difficulties in meeting the love language. And the narcissist should have a narcissistic injury. The therapist ends up spending an inordinate amount of time soothing the narcissist who has a narcissistic injury while unintentionally saying to the SLD, you have to be careful because he's really sensitive and let's tread carefully. Now that is a danger in all marriage therapy with an SLD and a narcissist, because if you have to avoid the narcissistic injuries, that means you are spending less time with the SLD, their point of view, and their experience with being hurt by the narcissist. You cannot do marriage therapy by avoiding the potholes or landmines. In therapy, with a therapist who does not understand SLDs or codependents and pathological narcissism or the human magnet syndrome compelled relationship is under the presumption that if we just get these love languages going, they will be happy and everything will be good. But it doesn't. What they've done is they've built up the narcissist and their expectations that the problem is their partner is not making them feel loved. And because they don't know about pathological narcissism, they're unaware that this person can never meet the narcissist's need for love because it's just too diverse and requires too much sacrifice, too much of the other person. So what happens is it sets up the narcissist to feel like they're doing the work and the SLD failing. It's a trap. And the marriage therapist who subscribes to these love languages, or if you subscribe to these love languages and you feel that you can make your relationship work and your partner is a pathological narcissist, then you're going to have a really big disappointment. One is, it's not going to be and it never will be reciprocal. The love language that you want your partner to speak, the narcissist to speak to you, will only happen if somehow they're not angered, they're not triggered, and that's impossible because we understand how pathological narcissists are always feeling slighted, always feeling unappreciated, as sensitive and as shallow as most narcissists are. The SLD has this tendency to blame themselves, to feel responsible. So in this type of therapy, with this type of book, it increases the shame. As I've explained, SLDs are filled with core shame and this fear of being alone. And if you have a therapist who does not understand these dynamics, they will embolden the narcissist. They will increase their grandiose and entitled beliefs that the problem is because of the other person, while not holding them responsible and feeding into their blame-only approach to relationships. So in conclusion, this wonderful book, The 5 Love Languages, it's great for people in relationships when there's not a pathological narcissist and an SLD. And if you've read my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, you understand that these two personality types always go together. A core trait of self-love deficit disorder is core shame. It's feeling fundamentally broken, fundamentally worthless, fundamentally not good enough. And if they should fail in a therapy that seems so exciting, so inviting in the beginning, then naturally they're going to blame themselves and feel even more weighted down by their core shame. Inevitably, this increases their lack of hope and they become sometimes hopeless and despondent. And it could very well be the last time they reach out for marriage or couples therapy. Think about that. We call this iatrogenic trauma, when the therapy itself or the treatment itself causes problems or hurts the patient or the client. And if failed couples or marriage therapy makes the person feel worse and should provoke them into being afraid of the same situation again, then you've created a dungeon in which there is no escape. So essentially, by using this book, you have built up the narcissist, built up the expectation that the problem can be solved if the other person just loves them enough. And you're telling it to a person that has sacrificed almost everything to try to make this person feel loved. And you're telling the SLD that if you do this well, your partner will be loved. If you should use this book and you are an SLD and you're in couples or marriage therapy, it's going to end terribly. It's going to make you feel more overwhelmed, tired, hopeless, and pessimistic. So what I'm trying to say is the application of this wonderful book to SLDs and pathological narcissists is dangerous. It's contraindicated. It can provide more harm than good. This is what we call iatrogenic trauma, is that the very nature of this psychotherapy, this potential healing and growing and coming together, actually worsens the problem and makes the SLD more afraid, more vulnerable, more open to harm, and can add to their gaslit guilt and shame and self-blame. It's nothing but a dangerous proposition. So I hope the presentation of how and why Gary Chapman's 5 love languages can be absolutely harmful to marriage or couples therapy with an SLD and a narcissist. I hope it helped you understand more of the inherent dangers of couples and marriage therapy with SLDs and narcissists. So please consider what's in this video. Please take care of yourself and don't give any one person the power to rewrite your perceptions and to put you in a vulnerable position. Stay focused on your own perceptions, your own experience. If it doesn't feel right, escape the danger by not participating or moving in the direction of the trap. And through my self-love recovery treatment program, which you can learn more about at the Self-Love Recovery Institute and the full-length seminar videos I offer, which are about 6 hours each, you can learn more about how to become self-love abundant, which is the codependency cure, so that you will never be in this position where you will seek therapy and use an approach that will hurt you more than it will help you. So take care and be well.